Hello everyone and welcome back to another book review. I have returned from vacation and I am working through a massive backlog of books that I have read but haven't filmed reviews for due to said vacation. So I have lots of book reviews coming, so feel free to stick around if you want to see any of those other book reviews. But today we are talking about an audiobook that I listened to, so I unfortunately have nothing to show you, and that is The Midnight Plan of the Repo Man by W. Bruce Cameron. So I actually got this book out for driving. I wanted to listen to an audiobook while driving. I usually like to do that if I have long stretches of driving ahead of me. I find it more interesting to listen to an audiobook over, say, 9 hours of driving if I'm driving somewhere, as opposed to music for 9 hours. If I'm just bopping around town, 20 minutes to the grocery store, I don't want to start an audiobook because I don't want to become invested. But if I have a 6, 9, 12-hour drive ahead of me, I download an audiobook and listen to it. It's the best way to listen to audiobooks and also the best way to drive, in my personal opinion. So I downloaded this from my library. I was really looking for something light, humorous, because I wanted something to capture my attention but also be funny for a long stretch of time. And this one had some tags about humor, mystery, and it had a fun name. The Midnight Plan of the Repo Man sounds kind of fun. And I got it because it was tagged as humorous. It appeared to be a mystery, which I like, but I don't handle violence and spooky very well. So I figured because it was also tagged as humorous, it wasn't going to be very graphic or a real dark mystery. And that was basically my thought process. I figured if I hated it, I could just return it and get a different library book, a different audiobook, also a library book. So I downloaded it and got started. When the audiobook started, I do have to admit, and if you are hearing the first part of my review and downloading it, I want to warn you, the first scene does make it seem like you're getting into a grittier mystery. And I was a little concerned. I was like, we'll let this go on, but if the mystery kind of stays at this level, it's going to be a little too intense for me and I'm going to be too spooked. I don't want to listen to an audiobook that's too scary and then go hiking in the woods for 3 hours where I can't relax and enjoy myself because I'm looking over my shoulder because I just listened to a scary audiobook. So at the beginning, we have what we learn a little bit later, as in right after this scene is a dream sequence, so I'm not going to be spoiling anything, but basically we are following Ruddy McCann. Ruddy McCann is the person who's having the dream in this situation. He was a former college football star, but something happened and it's not really clear what happened. It's not revealed until much later in the book, but he has fallen from grace. He did not go on to have the NFL career, but it's implied that it was due to his actions and not just his athletic talent. He was unable to continue on his career because of actions that he did on his part. He has fallen from grace. His football career is no more. He's kind of the disappointment of the town, and he's working in the town of Kalkaska, Michigan, which is actually a real place and has quite the fun name, Kalkaska, Michigan, as a repo man. So he is in charge of collecting cars from people who no longer want to pay them and pay on the car. And he has a sister. His parents are deceased, but he has a sister who's kind of running the family restaurant called, I think it's The Bear, and he's just kind of stuck. He's fallen in life. He's just doing what he needs to do. He has a lovable dog named Jake who he kind of hangs out with, but he's asleep and a big storm has blown through and he has a very literal or very, what's the word I'm looking for? He feels like it's really happening, a dream sequence in which he is a realtor and he's driving down this road because he's going to go see a cabin in the woods and show it to some people. He gets to the cabin, no one's there, he gets out, he walks down to the river, he's poking around, he's like, oh, someone's class ring, he picks it up, but on the way down to the cabin, he had passed 2 guys who were broken down or something on the side of the road. He didn't think anything of it, but the 2 men come towards him and he's thinking, well, interesting, you aren't the people. There was a woman on the phone when I talked to the people who wanted to see the property, so he's confused. But then he quickly realizes these 2 individuals are going to try to kill him, and he has no idea why. He doesn't know if he saw something he wasn't supposed to. He doesn't recognize these individuals. He's definitely a runner. He's athletic, so he's going through the woods, he's running, but ultimately he does wind up being killed in the dream sequence. And when I was first listening to this, that is the first thing you're introduced to before you even know Ruddy McCann, before you know this is a dream he's having. And it was kind of it wasn't graphic and it wasn't too intense. I think your average adult viewer would handle it just fine, for sure. I'm just very sensitive to that sort of thing, and I didn't want to listen to 12 hours, or I don't remember how long this audiobook was, of that sort of content. But it quickly became humorous after that. Ruddy McCann wakes up and thinks, well, that was a stressful, bad, weird dream, and he goes about his life. There's kind of this B-plot going on where he's trying to collect this truck from this guy whose name is Einstein. He's not the Einstein, he's just named Einstein. His not really that smart. He stops paying on his truck, and Ruddy is trying to collect the truck from him, but of course there's rules. You can't just like break into someone's house and get the truck. You have to kind of catch them and haul it away when they're not looking at it or thinking about it. So we have all this going on, and he's just going through life. But then Ruddy McCann realizes there's a voice in his head, and not like your normal internal monologue voice. There is a separate entity that is now residing in his head since the accident. And his name is Alan Lautner, and he's a realtor who was murdered. And slowly they piece together that Alan Lautner is the person who was in the dream sequence that Ruddy McCann had. That was Alan Lautner's last few minutes on Earth, and now his voice, 8 years later, has somehow entered into the head of Ruddy McCann. Ruddy McCann is freaked out. He doesn't like that Alan's there, especially complicating matters because Alan has just met a young girl named Katie who happens to be Alan's living daughter. And Ruddy would like to start a little bit of a romance with Katie, but Alan can see and hear everything. He can't read Ruddy's thoughts, but he can see and live kind of Ruddy's life. So Alan, Katie's dad, is in Ruddy McCann's head. Ruddy knows about a murder that's taking place, and the main plot, there's two subplots. There's like the whole car, there's the romance, but the main plot is Ruddy wants to bring Alan's killers, and Alan also wants to bring his killers to justice. It's not a mystery who did it. It's very, you saw the faces. Ruddy McCann has the dream, the vision of who the killers are, and those are the killers. But how do you explain that to local law enforcement? You say, I had a dream. Ruddy McCann decides to lead the police to the body where the body was buried because he saw that in the dream. But then it causes more problems. And the whole story is kind of Ruddy McCann trying to prove his innocence, trying to also kind of grow as a person because he's been in this rut, trying to move on from some mistakes in the past and have this romance with this girl and deal with a voice in his head. It is very funny. There were many times when listening to this audiobook that I was laughing out loud. I really enjoyed the narrator. I really enjoyed the story. I thought it was really well done. I had not heard of this author before, but it was very enjoyable, and I can't believe I haven't heard of the author before. I believe there's a second book in this series, so I might give that a listen to see what it's about. But I just thought it was a creative concept, like a voice in your head that is the dead individual, and then how do you convince law enforcement that you didn't do the murder because you know all the details about the murder, and also bring enough evidence forward to actually frame it on the murderers. I like the fact that we knew who the murderers were. I feel like sometimes in murder mysteries, or frequently in murder mysteries, the mystery is not knowing who the murderer is, but in this case we know who the murderers are. We don't know why they did it, and we don't know how to bring them to justice. We also have this aspect of there being the disembodied voice in the head and how these two personalities have to work together, and also just Ruddy McCann as an individual growing as a person, trying to become a better person, move on from mistakes in his past, and how to move forward from there in regard to relationships with different people in the town as well. I had a great time with this book. This was a 5-star read. I highly recommend. I've already recommended it to my sisters because I think it's a great book. But if you're looking for an audiobook to read, or I'm sure the print version is funny too, then definitely check this out. If you're looking for a light mystery, if you're looking for something entertaining to read, if you're looking for something funny, if you're looking for an audiobook to read or to listen to on a long trip, then I definitely recommend The Midnight Plan of the Repo Man. It's incredibly enjoyable. I enjoyed it from start to finish, and I think you will too. If you've read this series, if you have read anything else by W. Bruce Cameron, if you have any thoughts on this, I would love to hear it in the comments below. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.